Hello and welcome. I'm Joanne, and I'm so happy you're here with me tonight. In this video, I've gathered a gentle collection of sleepy dragon tales, magical bedtime stories filled with charm, wonder, and just a hint of adventure. These tales are perfect for helping you unwind and ease into a peaceful night's sleep. If you enjoy my videos, be sure to subscribe, like, and comment down below. This helps other sleepy listeners find their way to this cozy corner on YouTube. Now, before we begin, let's take a few moments to settle in together. If you haven't already, find a comfortable position. Let your head sink gently into your pillow. Allow those shoulders to soften. Feel the weight of the day slowly melt away. Take a slow, deep breath in. And gently breathe out. Once more, breathing in calm and breathing out any tension. Now, imagine yourself in a cozy wooden cabin tucked deep in a moonlit forest. The fire in the hearth crackles softly, casting golden shadows across the wooden floor. Outside, the stars glimmer quietly in the night sky, and everything feels still, peaceful, and safe. You feel warm, relaxed, and ready for a magical journey into sleep. Long ago, maybe even hundreds of years ago, there was a cottage halfway between this village and the far shoulder of the downs up there. In that cottage lived a shepherd with his wife and their little son. The shepherd spent his days and, during certain seasons, his nights too, up on the wide, open stretch of the downs. His only company was the sun, the stars, and his flock of sheep. The busy, chattering world of people was far away, out of sight and hearing. But his little son, when he wasn't helping his father, and often even when he was, spent much of his time buried in big books. These he borrowed from kind local gentry and friendly parsons in the area. His parents were very fond of him, and quite proud too, though they never said so when he was around. They let him go in his own way and read as much as he liked. Instead of the usual scoldings that might have come to a dreamy child, he was treated more or less as an equal by his parents. They figured it was a fair division of labor. They provided practical knowledge, and he brought the book learning. They knew that reading and learning could be quite useful at times, no matter what their neighbors might say. The boy mainly read books about natural history and fairy tales, taking them in together like a sandwich, one story, then the other, without worrying about which was true, and really, his way of reading was rather sensible. One evening, the shepherd came home looking pale and shaken. For several nights, he had been uneasy and distracted, not quite himself. Now, as he entered the cottage, he trembled all over. His wife was quietly sewing at the table, and the boy was deeply absorbed in a story about the giant with no heart in his body. The shepherd dropped into his chair and burst out, full of distress. "It's all over for me, Maria. I'll never be able to go back up on those downs again. Not ever, no matter what." "Now don't carry on like that," said his wife, who was a very sensible woman. "Just tell us what's happened, whatever it is that's got you so shaken, and then the three of us together, you, me, and the boy here, ought to be able to figure it out." "It started some nights ago," said the shepherd. "You know that cave up there? I've never liked it somehow, and the sheep don't like it either. And when sheep take a dislike to a place, there's usually a good reason. Well, for a while now, there have been strange noises coming from that cave. Low, heavy sighs mixed in with deep grunts, and sometimes snoring way down inside. But not ordinary snoring like you and me at night. More like, well, not quite honest snoring, if you know what I mean." "I know," said the boy quietly. "Of course, I was frightened," the shepherd went on, "but somehow I couldn't stay away. So this very evening before I came home, I went up by the cave, very quietly. And there, oh Lord, there I saw him at last, as plain as I see you now." "Saw who?" asked the wife, now growing just as uneasy as her husband. "Why, him, I'm telling you," said the shepherd. "He was half sticking out of the cave, looking like he was enjoying the cool of the evening in a kind of poetic, peaceful sort of way." What did he look like?" he asked eagerly. "Just like a dragon," said the shepherd. "Only, well, not so fierce as I'd expected. He was large, of course, and scaly, with a long tail and wings folded up behind him. But he wasn't doing any harm, just lying there peacefully, with his chin resting on his paws, looking out over the valley like he was thinking up poetry." The boy jumped up with shining eyes. "Let's all go and see him," he cried. "I've never seen a dragon, not a real one. You said he wasn't doing any harm." "Now don't be foolish," said his mother firmly. "There's no call for you to be getting mixed up in this. If there's a dragon on the downs, it's a matter for the proper authorities, no place for children." "But I'm not afraid," said the boy. "And maybe he's not a bad sort of dragon. Maybe he's tame." "That's just like you, always dreaming," said his mother. "You've read too many fairy tales, that's your trouble." But the boy wasn't listening anymore. His eyes were far away, and his thoughts were already up on the downs where the dragon lay waiting. The shepherd shook his head. "Tame or not, it's a dragon, and that's enough for me," he said. "And it's enough for the village, too. There'll be talk. There'll be a meeting, and if I know anything, they'll be sending for St. George before long." "St. George?" cried the boy. "Oh, but he always fights the dragons. He won't give this one a chance. He'll just come charging in with his spear." "Well, that's what he's famous for," said the shepherd, sighing. "And folks won't be satisfied till they see him do it. They don't care if the dragon's quiet or not. Just the word dragon is enough to set them off." The boy was silent for a moment, thinking hard. "Father," he said at last, "will you take me up there, just once, so I can see him? I'll be careful, I promise. I won't go too close, but I must see him for myself." The shepherd looked at his wife, who gave a reluctant nod. "All right," he said. "We'll go tomorrow at first light, before the rest of the village starts talking nonsense. But you stay behind me, and if I say run, you run. Understood?" The boy nodded, eyes wide with anticipation. So, early the next morning, the shepherd and the boy set off together across the quiet downs. The air was still and the grass was heavy with dew. They climbed slowly, without speaking much, both deep in thought. At last they came to the cave. The shepherd stopped at a safe distance and pointed. "There," he whispered, "just like I told you." The boy stepped forward a little, peering into the shadowy entrance, and sure enough, there lay the dragon, just as his father had described. His great body stretched along the ground, his chin resting on his forepaws, eyes half closed in a dreamy sort of way. He looked up as the boy approached, and to the boy's amazement, he smiled. "Good morning," said the dragon in a pleasant voice. "What brings you out so early?" The boy's heart was beating fast, but he managed a polite bow. "I've heard about you, sir," he said, "and I wanted to see you for myself. I hope you don't mind." "Not at all," said the dragon, shifting slightly to sit more upright. "I've been expecting you, actually. Thought someone with a bit of sense would show up eventually." The boy was delighted. "Are you a real dragon?" he asked. "Certainly," said the creature. "A rather respectable one, if I do say so. But I've given up all the roaring and ravaging and treasure guarding. These days, I prefer quiet living. A bit of poetry, some fresh air, a comfortable cave. That's enough for me." The boy sat down on a flat stone near the entrance. The dragon curled his tail more comfortably around himself and gave a contented sigh. "People don't usually expect that from a dragon," the boy said thoughtfully. "No, they don't," replied the dragon. "But I found it's better not to worry about what people expect. I just do what suits me." They talked together for a long time. The boy told the dragon all about the village and the people in it, and the dragon listened with great interest. In return, the dragon shared stories from his travels, bits of ancient history, and snatches of poetry he'd been working on. When at last the sun rose higher in the sky and the morning wore on, the boy stood up. "I'd better be getting home," he said. "They'll wonder where I've gone, but may I come again?" "I'd be delighted," said the dragon with a warm smile. "Visitors of your kind are rare. And bring a book next time, will you? I've run out of decent things to read." The boy promised, and with a cheerful wave, he and the shepherd began their walk back to the cottage. The shepherd was quiet, but the boy was full of excitement. "Isn't he wonderful?" the boy said. "So gentle and wise and kind." The shepherd muttered something about dragons being unpredictable, but he didn't sound so certain anymore. When they reached home, the boy went straight to his shelf and began selecting a few books to lend. He was already thinking about their next conversation, but his excitement was short-lived. By the afternoon, word had spread through the village. Someone else had seen the dragon, or at least the smoke from his cave, and fear began to grow. The villagers gathered in the square, voices loud and worried. "It's a dragon," someone cried. "We're not safe." "There's only one thing to do," said another. "Send for St. George. He'll know how to deal with it." And so a messenger was dispatched. The boy stood on the edge of the crowd, heart sinking. He knew what was likely to happen. Dragons in books were always slain. That was just how the stories went. But this dragon was different, and the boy was determined to save him. A few days later, St. George arrived. He rode into the village on a fine horse, wearing shining armor and carrying his great spear. The villagers greeted him with cheers and grateful relief. They told him all they knew about the cave, the smoke, the strange sounds, and begged him to rid them of the terrible dragon on the downs. St. George listened carefully, nodding as they spoke. Then he asked, "Has this creature done any harm?" There was an awkward silence. "Well, no," someone admitted, "but he's a dragon after all." St. George frowned thoughtfully. "I see. I shall go up and have a look, then decide what must be done." Now, the boy had been watching and waiting. As soon as he saw a chance, he slipped away from the crowd and followed St. George at a distance. When the knight stopped to water his horse at the village trough, the boy stepped forward. "Please, sir," he said, "I'd like to speak with you." St. George looked down at him kindly. "And what would you like to say, young man?" "It's about the dragon," said the boy. "He's not what people think. He's gentle and kind and wouldn't hurt anyone. He spends his time reading and writing poetry. I've spoken with him. He's really quite harmless." St. George raised his eyebrows. "Is that so?" "It is," the boy insisted. "Please, before you do anything, go and talk to him. You'll see for yourself." The knight considered this. "Well," he said at last, "I've always believed in hearing both sides of a story. Take me to him." The boy's heart leapt. "This way." The boy led St. George up the winding path along the downs, through tufts of heather and sunlit grass. The dragon's cave came into view, peaceful and still, with a curl of smoke drifting hazily from its mouth. As they approached, the dragon appeared, stretching out of the entrance with a look of mild curiosity. "Ah," he said cheerfully, "visitors! How delightful!" The boy stepped forward. "This is St. George," he said. "He's come to meet you." The dragon bowed politely. "An honor. I hope the village hasn't been too dramatic about me." St. George dismounted, looking the dragon up and down. "Well," he said at last, "you don't seem particularly fearsome." "I'm not," said the dragon simply. "I gave up all that long ago. These days, I prefer peaceful living, a bit of conversation, some poetry, and the occasional stroll under the stars." St. George chuckled. "Not quite what I expected." "You were going to fight me, I suppose?" the dragon asked without offense. "I was," admitted the knight. "It's what's expected of me. People send for St. George when there's a dragon about." "Quite understandable," said the dragon, "but rather awkward under the circumstances, don't you think?" The boy looked anxiously between them. "There must be something we can do. The village needs a show, something to settle their fears, but there's no need for anyone to be hurt." The dragon tapped his claws thoughtfully on a stone. "A performance, perhaps?" he suggested. "A little staged battle, nothing serious, of course. I pretend to be fierce, you pretend to defeat me, and the village is satisfied." St. George smiled. It may be the oddest thing I've agreed to, but I think it just might work." The boy beamed. Then it settled. The next morning, the whole village turned out for the great event. Men, women, and children gathered along the edge of the field below the downs, whispering nervously and craning their necks toward the hillside. At the front stood the mayor and the parson, looking very serious indeed. St. George arrived first, gleaming in his armor and mounted proudly on his horse. Behind him walked the boy, his heart beating fast. He had been up early, making sure all the details were in place. Then came the dragon. He approached slowly and grandly, head held high, his tail swaying with just the right amount of menace. The villagers gasped and huddled together, but he gave them only a courteous nod and moved into position at the far side of the field. St. George took up his place at the other end. The boy stood between them, acting as herald. "Let all here know that a great contest shall now take place between the mighty St. George and the terrible dragon of the Downs." There was a hush. Then the mock battle began. The dragon roared quite convincingly and blew a puff of smoke into the air. He reared up and pawed the ground. St. George charged bravely forward, his lance glinting in the sun. The two circled each other, clashing gently and then retreating. The knight's lance tapping the dragon's side, the dragon responding with careful sweeps of his tail that never came close to harm. The crowd was breathless with excitement. Finally, with a great roar and a very theatrical groan, the dragon staggered, spun slowly around, and fell to the ground with a soft thud. St. George stood over him and raised his spear. "People of the village," he cried, "your dragon is vanquished, but he has sworn to live in peace and trouble you no more." Cheers broke out. Hats were thrown in the air. The mayor wiped his brow in relief. The dragon opened one eye and gave a subtle wink to the boy, who smiled and clapped with the rest. From that day forward, the dragon became something of a local treasure. He returned to his cave on the downs, where he lived quietly and comfortably just as before. But now he was no longer feared. Children would sometimes climb up the hillside to listen to his stories or ask him riddles. He gave advice on gardening, read aloud from his favorite books, and held little poetry recitals when the weather was fine. The villagers, who had once been so afraid, now boasted proudly that their dragon was the most well-mannered literary dragon in the whole kingdom. As for St. George, he stayed for a few days as the guest of honor, enjoying the village's hospitality. Then, after shaking hands with the boy and exchanging a few verses with the dragon, he rode off to his next adventure, quite pleased that no blood had been spilled. And the boy? He continued to visit the dragon often, bringing him books and listening to his verses. They remained the best friends for many years. And though stories of knights and dragons filled the books he still loved to read, the boy always smiled to himself, knowing that sometimes, even in a world full of battles and beasts, there was room for peace, poetry, and understanding. As this gentle tale fades away, allow yourself to sink even deeper into rest. There is nothing you need to do, know where you need to be. Just float here in this cozy stillness. Let each breath carry you deeper down into relaxation and calm. And as you continue to drift down a little deeper, let me help tuck you in with our next sleepy tale. The little white princess always woke in her little white bed when the starlings began to chatter in the pearl gray morning. As soon as the woods were awake, she used to run up the twisting turret stairs with her little bare feet and stand on the top of the tower in her white bedgown and kiss her hands to the sun and to the woods and to the sleeping town and say, "Good morning, pretty world." Then she would run down the cold stone steps and dress herself in her short skirt and her cap and apron and begin the day's work. She swept the rooms and made the breakfast. She washed the dishes and she scoured the pans. And all this she did because she was a real princess. For all who should have served her, only one remained faithful, her old nurse, who had lived with her in the tower all the princess's life. And now the nurse was old and feeble. The princess would not let her work anymore, but did all the housework herself, while nurse sat still and did the sewing, because this was a real princess, with skin like milk and hair like flax and a heart like gold. Her name was Sabrinetta, and her grandmother was Sabra, who married St. George after he had killed the dragon, and by real rights all the country belonged to her. The woods that stretched away to the mountains, the downs that sloped down to the sea, the pretty fields of corn and maize and rye, the olive orchards and the vineyards, and the little town itself, with its towers and its turrets, its steep roofs and strange windows that nestled in the hollow between the sea, where the whirlpool was, and the mountains, white with snow and rosy with sunrise. But when her father and mother had died, leaving her cousin to take care of the kingdom till she grew up, he, being a very evil prince, took everything away from her, and all the people followed him, and now nothing was left her of all her possessions, except the great dragon-proof tower that her grandfather, St. George, had built, and all of who should have been her servants, only the good nurse. This was why Sabrinetta was the first person in all the land to get a glimpse of the wonder. Early, while all the townspeople were fast asleep, she ran up the turret steps and looked out over the field, and at the other side of the field there was a green ferny ditch and a rosy thorny hedge, and then came the wood. And as Sabrinetta stood on her tower, she saw a shaking and a twisting of the rose-thorny hedge, and then something very bright and shining wriggled out through it into the ferny ditch and back again. It only came out for a minute, but she saw it quite plainly, and she said to herself, "Dear me, what a curious, shiny, bright-looking creature! If it were bigger, and if I didn't know that there have been no fabulous monsters for quite a long time now, I should almost think it was a dragon." The thing, whatever it was, did look rather like a dragon, but then it was too small, and it looked rather like a lizard, and then it was too big. It was about as long as a hearthrug. "I wish it had not been in such a hurry to get back into the wood," said Sabrinetta. "Of course it's quite safe for me in my dragon-proof tower, but if it is a dragon, it's quite big enough to eat people, and today's the 1st of May, and the children go out to get flowers in the wood. When Sabronetta had done the housework, she did not leave so much as a speck of dust anywhere, even in the corniest corner of the winding stair. She put on her milk-white silky gown with the moon daisies worked on it and went up to the top of her tower again. Across the fields, troops of children were going out to gather the May, and the sound of their laughter and singing came up to the top of the tower. "I do hope it wasn't a dragon," said Sabronetta. The children went 2s by 3s and by 10s and by 20s, and the red and blue and yellow and white of their frocks were scattered on the green of the field. "It's like a green silk mantle worked with flowers," said the princess, smiling. Then 2s and by 3s, by 10s and by 20s, the children vanished into the wood, till the mantle of the field was left plain green once more. "All the embroidery is unpicked," said the princess, sighing. The sun shone, and the sky was blue, and the fields were quite green, and all the flowers were very bright indeed, because it was May Day. Then, quite suddenly, a cloud passed over the sun, and the silence was broken by shrieks from far off, and, like a many-colored torrent, all the children burst from the wood and rushed, a red and blue and yellow and white wave across the field, screaming as they ran. Their voices came up to the princess on her tower, and she heard the words threaded on their screams like beads on sharp needles. "The dragon! The dragon! The dragon! Open the gates! The dragon is coming! The fiery dragon!" And they swept across the field and into the gate of the town, and the princess heard the gate bang, and the children were out of sight. But on the other side of the field, the rose thorns crackled and smashed in the hedge, and something very large and glaring and horrible trampled the ferns in the ditch for one moment before it hid itself again in the covert of the wood. The princess went down and told her nurse, and the nurse at once locked the great door of the tower and put the key in her pocket. "Let them take care of themselves," she said, when the princess begged to be allowed to go out and help to take care of the children. "My business is to take care of you, my precious, and I'm going to do it. Old as I am, I can turn a key still." So Sabronetta went up again to the top of her tower and cried whenever she thought of the children and the fiery dragon, for she knew, of course, that the gates of the town were not dragon-proof, and that the dragon could just walk in whenever he liked. The children ran straight to the palace, where the prince was cracking his hunting whip down at the kennels, and told him what had happened. "Good sport," said the prince, and he ordered out his pack of hippopotamuses at once. It was his custom to hunt big game with hippopotamuses, and people would not have minded that so much, but he would swagger about in the streets of the town with his pack, yelping and gambolling at his heels, and when he did that, the greengrocer, who had his stall in the marketplace, always regretted it, and the crockery merchant, who spread his wares on the pavement, was ruined for life every time the prince chose to show off his pack. The prince rode out of the town with his hippopotamuses, trotting and frisking behind him, and people got inside their houses as quickly as they could when they heard the voices of his pack and the blowing of his horn. The pack squeezed through the town gates and off across country to hunt the dragon. Few of you who had not seen a pack of hippopotamuses in full cry will be able to imagine at all what the hunt was like. To begin with, hippopotamuses do not bay like hounds. They grunt like pigs, and their grunt is very big and fierce. Then, of course, no one expects hippopotamuses to jump. They just crash through the hedges and lumber through the standing corn, doing serious injury to the crops and annoying the farmers very much. All the hippopotamuses had collars with their name and address on, but when the farmers called at the palace to complain of the injury to their standing crops, the prince always said it served them right, for leaving their crops standing about in people's way, and he never paid anything at all. So now, when he and his pack went on, several people in the town whispered, "I wish the dragon would eat him," which was very wrong of them, no doubt, but then he was such a very nasty prince. They hunted by field, and they hunted by wold. They drew the woods blank, and the scent didn't lie on the downs at all. The dragon was shy and would not show himself. But just as the prince was beginning to think there was no dragon at all, but only a cock and bull, his favorite old hippopotamus gave tongue. The prince blew his horn and shouted, "Tally-ho, hark forward!" And the whole pack charged downhill toward the hollow by the wood. For there, plain to see, was the dragon, as big as a barge, glowing like a furnace, and spitting fire and showing his shining teeth. "The hunt is up," cried the prince. And indeed it was. For the dragon, instead of behaving as a quarry should and running away, ran straight at the pack, and the prince, on his elephant, had the mortification of seeing his prize pack swallowed up, one by one in the twinkling of an eye, by the dragon they had come out to hunt. The dragon swallowed all the hippopotamuses just as a dog swallows bits of meat. It was a shocking sight. Of the whole of the pack that had come out sporting so merrily to the music of the horn, now not even a puppy hippopotamus was left, and the dragon was looking anxiously around to see if he had forgotten anything. The prince slipped off his elephant on the other side and ran into the thickest part of the wood. He hoped the dragon could not break through the bushes there, since they were very strong and close. He went crawling on his hands and knees in a most unprince-like way, and at last, finding a hollow tree, he crept into it. The wood was very still. No crashing of branches, and no smell of burning came to alarm the prince. He drained the silver hunting bottle slung from his shoulder and stretched his legs in the hollow tree. He never shed a single tear for his poor tame hippopotamuses, who had eaten from his hand and followed him faithfully in all the pleasures of the chase for so many years. For he was a false prince, with skin like leather and hair like hearth brushes and a heart like a stone. He never shed a tear, but he just went to sleep. When he awoke, it was dark. He crept out of the tree and rubbed his eyes. The wood was black about him, but there was a red glow in a dell close by. It was a fire of sticks, and beside it sat a ragged youth with long yellow hair. All around lay sleeping forms which breathed heavily. "Who are you?" said the prince. "I'm Elfin, the pig keeper," said the ragged youth. "And who are you?" "I'm Tiresome the prince," said the other. "And what are you doing out of your palace at this time of the night?" asked the pig keeper severely. "I've been hunting," said the prince. The pig keeper laughed. "Oh, it was you I saw then. A good hunt, wasn't it? My pigs and I were looking on." All the sleeping forms grunted and snored, and the prince saw that they were pigs. He knew it by their manners. "If you had known as much as I do," Elfin went on, "you might have saved your back." "What do you mean?" said Tiresome. "Why, the dragon," said Elfin. "You went out at the wrong time of day. The dragon should be hunted at night." "No, thank you," said the prince with a shudder. "A daylight hunt is quite good enough for me, you silly pig keeper." "Oh well," said Elfin, "do as you like about it. The dragon will come and hunt you tomorrow as likely as not. I don't care if he does, you silly prince." "You're very rude," said Tiresome. "Oh no, only truthful," said Elfin. "Well, tell me the truth then. What is it that, if I had known as much as you do about, I shouldn't have lost my hippopotamuses?" "You don't speak very good English," said Elphin. "But come, what will you give me if I tell you?" "If you tell me what?" said the tiresome prince. "What do you want to know?" "I don't want to know anything," said Prince Tiresome. "Then you're more of a silly than I even thought," said Elphin. "Don't you want to know how to settle the dragon before he settles you?" "It might be as well," the prince admitted. "Well, I haven't much patience at any time," said Elphin, "and now I can assure you that there's very little left. What will you give me if I tell you?" "Half my kingdom," said the prince, "and my cousin's hand in marriage." "Done," said the pig keeper. "Here goes. The dragon grows small at night. He sleeps under the root of this tree. I use him to light my fire with." And, sure enough, there under the tree was the dragon on a nest of scorched moss, and he was about as long as your finger. "How can I kill him?" said the prince. "I don't know that you can kill him," said Elphin, "but you can take him away if you brought anything to put him in. That bottle of yours would do." So between them they managed, with bits of stick and by singeing their fingers a little, to poke and shove the dragon till they made it creep into the silver hunting bottle, and then the prince screwed on the top tight. "Now we've got him," said Elphin. "Let's take him home and put Solomon's seal on the mouth of the bottle, and then he'll be safe enough. Come along, we'll divide up the kingdom tomorrow, and then I shall have some money to buy fine clothes to go courting in." But when the wicked prince made promises, he did not make them to keep. "Go on with you. What do you mean?" he said. "I found the dragon and I've imprisoned him. I never said a word about courtings or kingdoms. If you say I did, I shall cut your head off at once." And he drew his sword. "All right," said Elphin, shrugging his shoulders. "I'm better off than you are anyhow." "What do you mean?" spluttered the prince. "Why, you've only got a kingdom and a dragon, but I've got clean hands and 75 fine black pigs." So Elphin sat down again by his fire, and the prince went home and told his parliament how clever and brave he had been, and though he woke them up on purpose to tell them, they were not angry, but said, "You are indeed brave and clever," for they knew what happened to people with whom the prince was not pleased. Then the prime minister solemnly put Solomon's seal on the mouth of the bottle, and the bottle was put in the treasury, which was the strongest building in the town, and was made of solid copper, with walls as thick as Waterloo Bridge. The bottle was set down among the sacks of gold, and the junior secretary to the junior clerk of the last lord of the treasury was appointed to sit up all night with it and see if anything happened. The junior secretary had never seen a dragon, and, what was more, he did not believe the prince had ever seen a dragon either. The prince had never been a really truthful boy, and it would have been just like him to bring home a bottle with nothing in it and then to pretend that there was a dragon inside. So the junior secretary did not at all mind being left. They gave him the key, and when everyone in the town had gone back to bed, he let in some of the junior secretaries from other government departments, and they had a jolly game of hide-and-seek among the sacks of gold, and played marbles with the diamonds and rubies and pearls in the big ivory chests. They enjoyed themselves very much, but by and by the copper treasury began to get warmer and warmer, and suddenly the junior secretary cried out, "Look at the bottle!" The bottle, sealed with Solomon's seal, had swollen to 3 times its proper size and seemed to be nearly red hot, and the air got warmer and warmer, and the bottle bigger and bigger, till all the junior secretaries agreed that the place was too hot to hold them, and out they went, tumbling over each other in their haste. And just as the last got out and locked the door, the bottle burst, and out came the dragon, very fiery and swelling more and more every minute, and he began to eat the sacks of gold and crunch up the pearls and diamonds and rubies as if they were sugar. By breakfast time, he had devoured the whole of the prince's treasures, and when the prince came along the street at about 11, he met the dragon coming out of the broken door of the treasury, with molten gold still dripping from his jaws. Then the prince turned and ran for his life, and as he ran toward the dragon-proof tower, the little white princess saw him coming, and she ran down and unlocked the door and let him in, and slammed the dragon-proof door in the fiery face of the dragon, who sat down and whined outside because he wanted the prince very much indeed. The princess took Prince Tiresome into the best room and laid the cloth and gave him cream and eggs and white grapes and honey and bread, with many other things, yellow and white and good to eat, and she served him just as kindly as she would have done if he had been anyone else instead of the bad prince who had taken away her kingdom and kept it for himself, because she was a true princess and had a heart of gold. When he had eaten and drunk, he begged the princess to show him how to lock and unlock the door. The nurse was asleep, so there was no one to tell the princess not to, and she did. "You turn the key like this," she said, "and the door keeps shut, but turn it 9 times round the wrong way, and the door flies open." And so it did, and the moment it opened, the prince pushed the white princess out of the tower, just as he had pushed her out of her kingdom, and shut the door, for he wanted to have the tower all for himself. And there she was in the street, and on the other side of the way the dragon was sitting whining, but he did not try to eat her, because, though the old nurse did not know it, dragons cannot eat white princesses with heart of gold. The princess could not walk through the streets of the town in her milky, silky gown with the daisies on it, and with no hat and no gloves, so she turned the other way and ran out across the meadows toward the wood. She had never been out of her tower before, and the soft grass under her feet felt like grass of paradise. She ran right into the thickest part of the wood, because she did not know what her heart was made of, and she was afraid of the dragon. And there in a dell she came on Elfin and his 75 fine pigs. He was playing his flute, and around him the pigs were dancing cheerfully on their hind legs. "Oh dear," said the princess, "do take care of me. I'm so frightened." "I will," said Elfin, putting his arms around her. "Now you are quite safe." "What are you frightened of?" "The dragon," she said. "So it's gotten out of the silver bottle?" said Elfin. "I hope it's eaten the prince." "No," said Sabrinetta. "But why?" "He told her of the mean trick that the prince had played on him, and he promised me half his kingdom and the hand of his cousin, the princess," said the Elfin. "Oh dear, what a shame," said Sabrinetta, trying to get out of his arms. "How dare he?" "What's the matter?" he asked, holding her tighter. "It was a shame, or at least I thought so. But now he may keep his kingdom, half and whole, if I may keep what I have." "What's that?" asked the princess. "Why, you, my pretty, my dear," said Elfin. "And as for the princess, his cousin, forgive me, dearest heart, but when I asked for her, I hadn't seen the real princess, the only princess, my princess." "Do you mean me?" said Sabrinetta. "Who else?" he asked. "Yes, 5 minutes ago I was a pig keeper. Now I've held you in my arms, I'm a prince, though I should have to keep pigs to the end of my days." "But you haven't asked me," said the princess. "You asked me to take care of you," said Elfin, "and I will, all my life long." So that was settled, and they began to talk of really important things, such as the dragon and the prince, and all the time Elfin did not know that this was the princess, but he knew that she had a heart of gold, and he told her so many times. The mistake, said Elfin, was in not having a dragon-proof bottle. I see that now. Oh, is that all? Said the princess. I can easily get you one of those, because everything in my tower is dragon-proof. We ought to do something to settle the dragon and save the little children. So she went off to get the bottle, but she would not let Elfin come with her. If what you say is true, she said, if you are sure that I have a heart of gold, the dragon won't hurt me, and somebody must stay with the pigs. Elfin was quite sure, so he let her go. She took the dragon-proof bottle, made of burnished brass, and ran back to the wood and to the dell, where Elfin was sitting among his sleek black pigs waiting for her. I thought you were never coming back, he said. You've been away a year at least. The princess sat down beside him among the pigs, and they held each other's hands till it was dark. And then the dragon came crawling over the moss, scorching it as he came, and getting smaller as he crawled, and curled up under the root of the tree. Now then, said Elfin, you hold the bottle. Then he poked and prodded the dragon with bits of stick till it crawled into the dragon-proof bottle, but there was no stopper. Never mind, said Elfin, I'll put my finger in for a stopper. No, let me, said the princess. But of course, Elfin would not let her. He stuffed his finger into the top of the bottle, and the princess cried out, the sea, run for the cliffs. And off they went, with the 75 pigs trotting steadily after them in a long black procession. The bottle got hotter and hotter in Elfin's hands, because the dragon inside was puffing fire and smoke with all his might. Hotter and hotter and hotter, but Elfin held on till they came to the cliff edge, and there was the dark blue sea and the whirlpool going round and around. Elfin lifted the bottle high above his head and hurled it out between the stars and the sea, and it fell in the middle of the whirlpool. We've saved the country, said the princess. You've saved the little children. Give me your hands. I can't, said Elfin. I shall never be able to take your dear hands again. My hands are burnt off. And so they were. They were only black cinders where his hands ought to have been. The princess kissed them and cried over them and tore pieces of her silky, milky gown to tie them up with, and the two went back to the tower and told the nurse all about everything, and the pigs sat outside and waited. He is the bravest man in the world, said Sabrinetta. He has saved the country and the little children. But oh, his hands, his poor dear darling hands. Here the door of the room opened, and the oldest of the 75 pigs came in. It went up to Elfin and rubbed itself against him with little loving grunts. See the dear creature, said the nurse, wiping away a tear. It knows, it knows. Sabrinetta stroked the pig, because Elfin had no hands for stroking or for anything else. The only cure for a dragon burn, said the old nurse, is pig's fat, and well, that faithful creature knows it. It wouldn't for a kingdom, cried Elfin, stroking the pig as best as he could with his elbow. Is there no other cure? Asked the princess. Here another pig put its black nose in at the door, and then another and another, till the room was full of pigs, a surging mass of rounded blackness, pushing and struggling to get at Elfin, and grunting softly in the language of true affection. There is one other, said the nurse. The dear affectionate beasts, they all want to die for you. What is the other cure? Said Sabrinetta anxiously. "If a man is burnt by a dragon," said the nurse, "and a certain number of people are willing to die for him, it is enough if each should kiss the burn and wish it well in the depths of his loving heart." The number, cried Sabrinetta. 77, said the nurse. "We only have 75 pigs, said the princess, "and with me, that's 76. "It must be 77, and I really can't die for him, so nothing can be done," said the nurse sadly. "He must have cork hands." "I knew about the 77 loving people," said Elphin, "but I never thought my dear pigs loved me so much as all this, and my dear too. And, of course, that only makes it more impossible. There's one other charm that cures dragon burns, though, but I'd rather be burnt black all over than marry anyone but you, my dear, my pretty." "Why, who must you marry to cure your dragon burns?" asked Sabrinetta. "A princess. That's how St. George cured his burns." "There now, think of that," said the nurse, "and I never heard tell of that cure, old as I am." But Sabrinetta threw her arms round Elphin's neck and held him as though she would never let him go. "Then it's all right, my dear, brave, precious Elphin," she cried, "for I am a princess, and you shall be my prince. Come along, nurse. Don't wait to put on your bonnet. We'll go and be married this very moment." So they went, and the pigs came after, moving in stately blackness 2 by 2. And the minute he was married to the princess, Elphin's hands got quite well, and the people, who were weary of Prince Tiresome and his hippopotamuses, hailed Sabrinetta and her husband as rightful sovereigns of the land. Next morning, the prince and princess went out to see if the dragon had been washed ashore. They could see nothing of him, but when they looked out toward the whirlpool, they saw a cloud of steam, and the fishermen reported that the water for miles around was hot enough to shave with. And as the water is hot there to this day, we may feel pretty sure that the fierceness of that dragon was such that all the waters of all the sea were not enough to cool him. The whirlpool is too strong for him to be able to get out of it, so there he spins around and around forever and ever, doing some useful work at last, and warming the water for poor fisher folk to shave with. Feel your body growing even more relaxed now. Supported, safe, at ease. Let the warmth of the story glow gently around you, like firelight dancing on the walls. And as you settle deeper and deeper down into this quiet space, let me help you get even more sleepy with one final dreamy tale. Very long ago, as old people have told it, there lived a dreadful monster who came out of the north and laid waste to entire stretches of land. It devoured both people and animals, and was so fearsome, many believed that unless some kind of help arrived, no living creature would survive. This monster had a strange and terrible form. Its body was shaped like an ox, but its legs were like those of a frog. 2 short forelegs in front, and 2 long hind legs in back. It also had a serpent-like tail, 10 fathoms long, that's 60 feet if you can imagine it. When it moved, it leapt like a frog, and with every bound, it covered half a mile of ground. Fortunately, it had one strange habit. Once it arrived in a place, it would stay there for several years, not moving on until it had devoured everything, every creature, every trace of life, leaving only silence behind. Nothing could harm it. Its entire body was covered in scales that were harder than stone or metal, and its 2 enormous eyes glowed in the dark, shining at night like the brightest lanterns. Even during the day, their gleam was terrifying. Anyone who made the mistake of looking directly in those eyes became bewitched, as if enchanted, and would rush helplessly into the monster's open jaws. And so the dragon fed with ease. It never needed to chase its prey. It simply waited and let them come to it. The kings of all the neighboring lands offered great rewards to anyone who could destroy the monster, whether by strength or sorcery. Many had tried, but every one of them had failed. Once, someone even set fire to the forest where the dragon was sleeping. The whole forest was burned to ashes, but the fire didn't leave so much as a mark on the monster. Still, there was one old legend that offered hope. Among the wise men of the land, it was said that the dragon could be defeated, but only by someone who possessed King Solomon's signet ring. The ring was engraved with a secret inscription, and anyone wise enough to read it would discover the secret of how to destroy the beast. The trouble was, no one knew where the ring was hidden, and there was no magician or learned man left who could read the strange writing on it if it were ever found. Now at that time, there lived a brave and clever young man in one of the northern kingdoms. He had heard many stories about the terrible dragon, and though others trembled at the thought of it, the young man's heart stirred with something different, something bold and curious. He had no sword for great fame, nor magic cloak, nor royal title, but what he did have was determination and a quiet confidence in his mind and spirit. One day, he made a solemn vow. He would seek out King Solomon's lost ring and discover a way to defeat the dragon. So he packed a little satchel with bread and water and set off without delay, heading first toward the lands of the East, where the old traditions whispered of wise men, ancient books, and hidden knowledge. He wandered far from his home, over hills and forests, through cities and deserts. He asked questions in every village and studied every old tale he could find, but no one could tell him where to look for the ring, and many scoffed at his quest. Still, he did not give up. At last, after many months of travel, he came to a place where the people spoke of a great magician who lived deep in the mountains. They said the magician was very old, very powerful, and very secretive. He might know something about the ring, if he could be persuaded to speak. Without hesitation, the young man climbed the steep and winding path that led into the mountain. For days he searched, and finally, one cold morning, he came to a little stone hut hidden among the rocks. Smoke curled from its chimney, and the air shimmered with a faint scent of herbs and wood smoke. The young man knocked 3 times at the door. After a long pause, the door creaked open, and there stood the magician. His eyes were sharp and bright, like they held storms and stars within them. His beard was long and white, and his robe was woven with strange silver patterns. He studied the young man for a moment before speaking. "What is it that you seek?" he asked, in a voice as quiet as wind through the trees. The young man bowed his head and said, "I seek King Solomon's ring. I believe it holds the secret to defeating the dragon of the north." The magician was silent for a long time. Then, at last, he stepped aside. "Come in," he said. "We shall see." The young man stepped quietly into the hut. It was dim and warm inside, filled with curious things. Jars of dried herbs, glowing stones, and scrolls covered in ancient writing. The magician pointed to a small wooden stool, and the young man sat down without a word. For a while, the magician moved about in silence, stirring something in a pot and muttering to himself. At last, he turned and looked the young man full in the face. "You are not the first to come here asking about Solomon's ring," he said, "but you are the first who asks not for riches or power, but to help others. This is why I will help you." The young man listened intently as the magician continued. "The ring you seek lies deep beneath the earth, in a secret place known only to the spirits of the old world. To reach it, you must journey to the far edge of the world, where the cliffs fall into the sea. There you will find a cave guarded by powers that no sword can fight." The magician stepped closer and placed a small charm into the young man's hand. "This will protect you from enchantments," he said, "but you must also carry patience, kindness, and cleverness. These will serve you better than any weapon." The young man bowed gratefully. "Once you find the ring," the magician added, "you must bring it back to me. I alone can read the inscription and tell you what it means." The young man promised. He spent one more night in the magician's hut, and before dawn he set off again, this time toward the edge of the world. The young man traveled for many days and nights through wild forests and quiet valleys, across wide rivers and windswept plains. He carried little with him now, just the charm from the magician, a small bit of food, and the courage in his heart. At last, he came to the place the magician had spoken of, the far edge of the world, where steep cliffs dropped down into the sea and the wind howled like an old song. There, hidden beneath a curtain of ivy, he found the entrance to a dark cave. The air around it felt strange and heavy, as if the space itself remembered old magic. He stepped forward carefully, holding the magician's charm in his hand. As he entered, he felt the charm grow warm, and the strange weight in the air began to lift. The cave was quiet and cool, the stone walls glistening as if touched by starlight. Deeper and deeper he went, until the passage opened into a great chamber, and there, on a pedestal of crystal, lay a simple gold ring. It was small and plain, but it shimmered faintly in the dim light. When he picked it up, he saw the tiny inscription carved around the band, letters he could not read, but which seemed to shift and shine as if alive. At that moment, the cave trembled softly, and a voice, not loud, but ancient and clear, whispered through the stones. "Wisely held, rightly used." The young man bowed his head, tucked the ring safely away, and made his way back into the light. He did not look back. The young man traveled swiftly, the ring tucked safely beneath his coat. Though the path was long, he felt lighter than before, as if the ring itself guided his steps. At last, he returned to the magician's hut, high in the mountains. The old man greeted him with a quiet nod. "You have it?" he asked. The young man placed the ring in his outstretched hand. The magician turned it slowly, letting the light catch the hidden writing. Then he nodded once more. "Yes," he said softly, "this is King Solomon's ring, and here, in this inscription, lies the secret of how the dragon may be overcome." He sat down by the fire and began to read the ancient words aloud, slowly and carefully. As he spoke, the letters on the ring seemed to shimmer more brightly. "The one who bears this ring," the magician read, "must not strike with word or spell. The beast is bound by deeper magic, and its doom lies in a hidden word, one that must be spoken aloud in the presence of the creature itself." The young man leaned forward. "And what is the word?" The magician looked at him seriously. "The word cannot be spoken yet," he said. "First, you must journey to the land of ice, far to the north, and find the Lady of the Northern Lights. Only she can tell you the word." The young man felt a flicker of fear, but he nodded. "I will go." The magician placed the ring back into his hand. "Be wise, be kind, and trust what is true. The journey will test your spirit more than your strength." The next morning, just as the sun was rising, the young man set off once more, this time toward the frozen lands of the north. The road to the north was long and cold. As the young man journeyed farther, the air grew sharper and frost clung to the trees like silver lace. The sky became paler each day, and the sun, when it appeared, stayed low on the horizon like a watchful eye. But he did not turn back. He crossed frozen rivers and climbed icy hills. He passed through still forests where not even a bird stirred, and across vast white fields where only the sound was the crunch of his boots in the snow. At last, when it seemed he could go no further, he came upon a place unlike any he had seen before. The snow beneath his feet sparkled like stardust, and the sky above shimmered with pale blue and violet light. This, he knew, must be the land of the Northern Lights. And then, without a sound, the lady appeared. She seemed to rise from the air itself, wrapped in robes that shifted like the aurora. Her eyes held the calm of distant stars, and her voice, when she spoke, was gentle and clear as wind over snow. "You have come for the word," she said. The young man bowed low. "Yes, my lady. I carry the ring of Solomon, and I seek the word that will undo the dragon of the north." The lady looked at him kindly. "You have shown courage and a heart that seeks no glory for itself. That is why I will give you the word. But you must speak it not in anger nor in fear. Only when the dragon sees his end in your eyes and you offer him peace will the word hold its power." She leaned forward and whispered a single word into his ear, a word so ancient and pure it seemed to echo through the sky itself. The young man bowed once more. "Thank you," he said, and as he looked up, the lady was gone. Only the swirling lights above remained, dancing quietly in the northern sky. The young man made his way homeward, the word of power held softly in his heart. The journey back was cold and long, but the lightness within him seemed to carry him faster than before. At last, he reached the lands where the dragon still lay, where the fields were quiet and no birds sang, and no living creature dared to go near. The monster was there, just as the stories had said. Its great body lay stretched across a barren plain. Its eyes burned like twin flames in the dusk, and even now it did not move, only waited. But the young man did not flinch. He walked slowly toward the beast, holding the ring in his hand, and when he was close enough to feel the warmth of its breath, he spoke. He did not shout. He did not tremble. He simply met the dragon's gaze and said the word. The moment the sound passed his lips, the dragon gave a great, shuddering breath. Its eyes dimmed. Its terrible body began to tremble, not with rage, but with something like sadness. The beast bowed its great head low to the earth, and then, slowly and gently, it vanished, like smoke on the wind, like a shadow leaving at sunrise. It was gone. The land sighed with relief. Birds returned to the sky. The grass grew green again. The young man stood in silence, the ring still warm in his hand, and knew that the spell had been broken, not with fire or steel, but with courage, kindness, and a word of peace. And as this dreamy collection of sleepy dragon tales finally comes to a close, give yourself full permission to rest fully now. Feel the softness of your blankets. Embrace the hush of night all around you. There is nothing left to do, only rest. Let the gentle magic of the stories linger and carry you down, down, all the way down to sleep. Wishing you the sweetest dreams, my friend. Good night for now, and sleep well.